Welcome to Real Police Talk. We are back with Neil, who is answering some questions that our listeners have emailed through. Let's listen to what he has to say. He wanted to point out that these are his experiences, and despite many injuries over 25 years of policing, these are ones he can remember. He does not mention his PTSD, as this is a complex mental injury spanning many years. Warning, some people may find the language and the descriptions upsetting. Please like, subscribe, and follow.
What injuries have you received during your career? Oh, God, injuries. In 2010, I was unfortunately stabbed in the left arm. I blame myself for that because you become very complacent. And very relaxed when you've been doing a job for a certain time. And unfortunately, I had my guard down without realising that, something nasty could happen no matter who you're talking to. So I was basically dealing with an incident. I was probably a bit overconfident. I wasn't nasty to anybody in any way. It was just a stop search in the middle of the night. And yeah, unfortunately, whilst talking to this person, I got attacked with a Stanley knife, and then they ran off. I gave chase, not realising that I'd been stabbed. I just thought he'd hit me. And then it was about 30 seconds later when I felt my arm was wet that I realised that I'd been stabbed. So that was one incident. Unfortunately, it never happens to anybody again. If there are any police officers out there listening, don't ever let your guard down, no matter how confident you think you are when you're dealing with a situation. Another time when I was custody sergeant, I'd been in custody for over a year, and I can honestly say that my 2 years that I had in custody, I had more fights in custody than I'd had in my previous 12 years as a beat bobby. And that's because you're in close proximity to individuals who are in custody for a reason. There are some nasty people out there, but saying that, as a police officer, you only get to deal with 2% of the population that are criminals. It's just unfortunate that when you're in a custody position, that's all you've got in front of you is criminals. And I've been spat at, I've been, threatened, and people threatening my family, all that sort of stuff. But it was a strange time, and it changed me a lot working in custody. It really did. But to say for the better, probably not. Probably not. I think it changed me in a way that I don't. If I look back now through the therapy that I have, it made me a very angry person. It made me a very sceptical person. But sorry, went off grid then. Talking about injury, I was working with a colleague, another sergeant, because there's usually two sergeants in a custody block. And couldn't meet a nicer bloke. He was salt of the earth. Honestly, he was. I don't say this about a lot of people, but he was a genuinely nice fellow. And he opened the door to a prisoner who we knew had mental health issue. And it was 7 o'clock in the morning. We just started our journey. But because he was such a nice bloke, he thought he'd have a chat with him, offer him some breakfast, which is great, and that works with a lot of people. This guy come flying out of the cells and was running around the custody area, trying to get out, and I ended up having a fight with him, and we ended up on the floor. It was quite a violent fight, if I remember, and it went on for over 20 minutes before backup arrived, because they had to come from quite a way. And I ended up just holding on to him and pinning him to the floor for what seemed like an age. It was probably 15 minutes. And anyway, they came, they handcuffed him, they put him back in the cell. And I went back to my desk, made myself a coffee, sat down, and I thought, my hand, it's a bit sore. Didn't nothing of it, carried on working, and then it just ballooned. And they sent me to the hospital to get it checked, and I'd broken my hand. How I'd done it, I don't know. But yeah, it was during that scuffle. So that was another one. Another incident, large lad in the town, got about 5 years servicing. Was on the riot van in the town, which is a weekend thing. And there was a big lad. I'm not talking big as in muscular. He was about 25 in age, but he was about 20 stone. So he was like a garden shed, and he was having a go at two of the younger bobbies. But I was behind him. He didn't see me come from behind. So he's threatening her, and they're not sure what to do. So I jumped on his back to get him down to the floor so he could be handcuffed, etc., because he'd assaulted somebody. And I used all my strength I had in me, because I was pretty skinny myself then, to get him onto the floor. We fell back and he landed on top of me and dislocated my shoulder, which I've had problems with ever since. But yeah, that was self-inflicted, I suppose. But unfortunately, those things happen when you're rolling around. But you get to a certain age, in your 40s, where you tend not to do that anymore. It happens occasionally, but yeah. You let the young ones get involved in all that sort of stuff. Other injuries, just black eyes. I've got a broken nose, which I didn't know I had. No idea when I've done that, but probably in custody as well.
Welcome to part 2. Neil was asked about his awards and commendations throughout his career. Again, Neil wanted to highlight that many police officers and community support officers are always worthy of recognition for their good work and bravery. It doesn't happen enough in his opinion. Warning, may contain upsetting descriptions and bad language.
Commendations, oh dear. Commendations, yeah, I've had a few commendations during my career. You want me to talk about the incidents themselves and more got them? Okay. My first one, I was a probationer. I'd just come out of my 10 weeks training with a tutor. So it was my first week on my own out in the big wild west. And I've been and took a statement off somebody for an incident that had happened, and I was driving back to the Nick. We were due to go off duty. It was about 10 o'clock. So it was about 9:45, and I was heading back, and I thought, right, I'll get in. I'll put this statement with the crime report and go home. Simple as that. I drove, as I drove, it was in a really busy town. And usually, you know, when you're driving back to the Nick to go off duty, you've got blinkered vision. You don't see anything from the side. You're just driving because you want to go home. So now I was driving down, and I had to drive past a pub that was renowned for problems. And I looked at the pub, and everybody was outside drinking in the streets, and there was nothing made. However, I looked the other side of the road, and there was two proper units, like massive blokes, having a straightener. They were just having a slugging match, a fight. So I thought, shit. So, you know, I'd never come across anything like this before. So I pulled over, put my blues on. I didn't put any sirens on, but just put my blues on. And it could just about be seen on the town centre CCTV. So I shouted up on the radio, I've come across, you know, fight sort of thing. But these blokes were of equal size. They must have been rugby players or something, because they were massive. And there I was, 26 years old, you know, about 8 stone wet through, a bit wet behind here still with all this new job I was doing. And they towered above me. They were like 6 foot, 6'2", 6'3", but the same in width. And they were just stood toe to toe, exchanging punches. And anyway, I got in the middle of them, and I pushed the one bloke as hard as I could in the chest to push him away. I said, you know, and shouted something. I can't remember what I shouted. It's like the usual thing that you're trying to say is, you know, get cool, whatever. But he was not pushing a wall. He just didn't move, and I just bounced off him. It was really funny. Well, it wasn't at the time, because I shit myself. I thought, Jesus Christ. So I got my baton out, and they weren't Cascos then. They were called PR24s. They were a stick that was about 3 foot long, and it had a handle on it. And I got that out, and it looks quite intimidating when you're holding it. But I think it's the first time I've ever used my baton. Well, I say used. The only other time I've used it is to smash a car window, but that was it. Anyway, I got the my baton out and got in between them again. And this guy just looked at me as if I was just getting in his way, ripped the baton from my hands, and threw it as far as he could. But he was staring at me as if to say, get out my way or you're next. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get battered. Because in them days, you didn't have body armour, you didn't have anything like that. My radio was here. I think that had become unclipped, so that was hanging down my back. I had a shirt and a tie on. And anyway, the next thing I thought of was my CS gas. Now, you very rarely used your CS gas, because if you did, 9 times out of 10 you're going to get it as well. Especially with CS, it's not as bad as pepper spray, I don't think. But the CS was horrible things. You know, you got it in your eyes. It felt like your eyes were just full of sand and gravel, and it just doesn't go away for ages. and then you have a shower once you've got it on you, and then it comes back again. And that goes on for ages. You have to throw all your clothes away because you can't mix it with your washing, because if the CS, like, you know, gets in the washing, you get it again in your eyes. It's horrible stuff. And again, I think it's the only time I ever used it. They were in a sort of like a little trigger thing, not like they are today. It's like a pen. It was that had a CS canister in, and it had a button on the side, but it was always really stiff, and sometimes it didn't work. A lot of the time, because it was really thick plastic. Anyway, these guys are still fighting. They're watching me on CCTV. The poor people in control must have been pissing themselves watching me and these two blokes. But they'd already shouted for backup, so backup was on its way. And anyway, I managed to set me gas off. So I gassed the one bloke, gassed the other, and then I got covered in gas. So it was like some out of a comedy sketch. The three of us couldn't see a thing. So anyway, I'm on my hands and knees. They're on their hands and knees. They're rolling about, holding their eyes. And I thought I've only got one pair of handcuffs. So I handcuffed one guy on his left hand, on his left arm, which only just fitted. That's how big he was. And the other one, I put it to his ankle. So I'd handcuff them together, but one arm to the other one's ankle. And that gave me a couple of minutes to, like, you know, sort my eyes out, but that was never going to happen. My eyes were streaming, I couldn't see. But it's just something you don't do. You don't handcuff somebody to somebody else's ankle. But he managed to keep them where they were till backup arrived, and they both got nicked. I can't remember. I think he might have been a fray. I don't know. In fact, I think he was a fray. And they got wheeled off to custody in the van. And I'm sat there on the floor, and my sergeant just absolutely pissing himself laughing. Because there was all the interest from the pub on the other side of the road. And yeah, I got a commendation for that, because just the fact that I didn't bottle it. It's the fact that I got involved and stopped somebody from, you know, possibly getting seriously hurt. But that was a strange one. A second commendation I got a few years later, and that was to do with statistics, because it's really political within the police with regards to statistics, and they operate to what the government wants. So you know for a fact, if there's an upcoming election, general election usually, they want to be able to say, we arrested this many people, we've got these many detections, or, you know, we've cut burglary, we've cut this, we've cut that. And all it is a different way of recording things. So, you know, the burglaries are still there. They're still really bad, but they're recorded a bit different. So it looks like there's less. It's a joke, really. But it happens. And I don't know whether that comes from management or whatever, but, you know, as I say, it's a discipline service. You do as you're told at the end of the day. My chief inspector said, we want as many detections and arrests as we can within the next 6 months. So, you know, it's fair enough. Anyway, I got 100 detected crimes within a 6-month period, which was, you know, massive, really. Which meant I went out and nicked at least 2 people a day, I should imagine. And detected the crime. A lot of it was drug crime. But you know, they were detections, whether he liked it or not. And I got an accommodation for that. Commendation for over 100 detected crimes, which I was quite proud of. And then my third one was quite funny. Probably unprecedented as well, because I don't think anybody's done it since. But it's quite a good story, really, with a good ending. I was the sergeant, acting sergeant of a different police station this time, because you move about a lot in the smaller forces, especially if you know you're good at your job, I suppose, not being big-headed. But there was a guy on the wrong side of the barrier on a busy motorway. Somebody called it in and said, "There's a guy, looks like he's going to jump," which happens more often than not, believe it or not. And usually people are deployed to talk them down, or they're called negotiating officers or something. And they have a good chat with them and whatever. They're good at what they do. They take a lot of training for it, but there was no negotiators on duty. So I basically gave an instruction to close the motorway which he was standing over, just a hard stop with a traffic car, and then so there was no traffic coming towards him. So if he'd have jumped, he'd probably still would have died, but he'd have just hit the tarmac instead of injuring an innocent member of the public. And I was thinking, oh shit, what do I do? Because he rang the guy who was going to jump, rang the controller and says, if I see a police car, I'm going to jump. If I hear a police car, I'm going to jump. I don't want none of them near me. Shit, what the bloody now we're going to do here? So I had, obviously with having good knowledge of the area where I was working, I had a car one side of the motorway, out of sight. We did a silent approach, which basically means, you go with blues on, but not with blues and twos. The sirens. So he can't hear us. I had another one parked down another exit off the motorway, out of view, and I parked down another one in a lay-by. I could see the guy if I walked up a bit, and he was the wrong side of the barrier, and he was on the phone talking to the controller, and I got a message, a point-to-point on my radio, which means that I had a phone call basically from the inspector in the control room, and he said, under no circumstances go near him because he's going to jump. I said, but I'm on the ground, I can see everything, I know what's going on. He said, Neil, under no circumstances do you go near this guy. I went, yeah, whatever, gaffer. And I thought to myself, no, because it will never end. It will never end. So I did something that just came into my head. I flagged down a car. And this guy was stopped, and he was on his way to work because it was about 5 o'clock, so it was like rush hour. He was on his way to work to do a twilight shift somewhere. And I says, look, I'm really sorry. You probably only ever see this on an American TV program, but I need to commandeer your car. And he was like, what? I says, I need to commandeer your car. And he said, right, okay, what's the problem? I said, you can drive. I said, but I need you to take me somewhere. He said, He said, okay. I said, where you from? And he said, like, it was just a village just down the way. So I got in his passenger seat. I says, I need you to drive around the island and I need you to stay in the outside lane. And I says, and as you get to the traffic lights on the other side, on top of the motorway bridge, I need you to slow down. And he says, yeah, no problem. But obviously, he was a bit shook up. But good as gold, he drove up to the island, got in the right lane. We went round the island. I took my seatbelt off at that point because I could see the guy. Obviously, I was in a car that belonged to somebody else. And he was being watched on CCTV because highways have cameras on busy islands. But they can turn them, they can control them, and they can patch him into police control, which is quite clever. And I basically, as we come up in the outside lane, the lights were on green. I was like, slow down. He said, but there's a car up my arse. I said, I don't care. Slow down. I says, I'm going to jump out while you're moving. So I got opposite with the guy who was going to jump. He was still on the phone looking down the motorway, leaning over one hand on the barrier, leaning over. Shit, he's going to jump. Anyway, opened the door, jumped out the car. Literally, I had to take 2 steps, grab him round the neck, and I basically ragged him back over the barrier. Got him on the floor, handcuffed him and arrested him under, 136 of the Mental Health Act. And called for ambo, and I got bollocking off the inspector for ignoring his instruction, which, he sat in a fucking room miles away, telling me what to do when I'm on the ground while everything's happening in front of me. So I made a decision to basically do what I did, and saved his life. And probably, if it had landed on a car, saved their lives as well. But just lifted the motorway block. Everybody went about their business. But this guy whose car I jumped in, who helped me, never found out who he was. Never saw him again. It was a shame, really. It was a shame because I wanted to thank him. But yeah, commandeered a cart in order to bring a swift end to what could have been a really nasty situation. And although I got a bollocking off the inspector, he was a bit of a knob anyway. Yeah, I got commended for that, for bravery and thinking outside the box, basically. So, innovative thinking, I think it read. So yeah, that was a good one. I enjoyed that one. And there's another one. But I'll be honest with you, I can't remember what it's for. Oh yes, I do. Yeah, it was an operation that I put together to deal with county lines and drugs that were coming into the county from other counties. Got a commendation for that, but there's not much to say about that apart from I ran a team from one of the bigger nicks, and we went out every day in plain clothes, just targeting known drug users, finding out who the people were that were supplying them, gathering intelligence. And we had some good results. Because during that operation, we also caught a couple of members of a Romanian gang that were snatching handbags off old ladies, basically, which is the lowest of the low, isn't it? You know, it happened right, because we were in plain clothes. I remember it happening right in front of me. And we had a foot chase, and there was about 6 coppers chasing this one bloke. And he got onto the railway, which is always dangerous, and you have to phone Network Rail, or you have to get control to ring them and BTP to put a warning on the track that there's officers on the track. They never like it because it makes the trains late. But we had to get this guy. This guy, he'd been doing it for weeks. Or him and his gang were doing it for weeks. And he ran for a couple of miles down the tracks, and I was getting a call all the time. Can can it be lifted? Is it safe? I'm like, no, we're still chasing him down the railway. And he came to a point where he come to a railway bridge, and there were some houses to the left of where he was, and a wall. And he jumps. I was way beyond by then. I mean, this was, what? I must have been mid-40s by then. You don't do any running when you're mid-40s. That's for the young uns. But I kept up with her. Anyway, he jumped onto the wall, and then he jumped onto the garage roof. He went straight through the garage roof, broke both his legs. And the officers got down, opened the garage door, and somebody just shouted, "You nicked." And that was that. But yeah, that was a good result, getting that bloke. It was, he had to be taken to hospital first, obviously, but teach him not to run away from the police, I suppose. But yeah, those are the commendations I've had. Missed out on a few that should have been given. But they're not easy to come by. You have to do something really special to get accommodation within the police, and fair play to those that do, that go above and beyond what they're paid to do. There's some really good bobbies out there, and there's some really good thief takers from all over the country. And there's people that live and breathe the job, and fair play to them. The more awards they get, the better, because they deserve to be recognised for what they do. So, yeah.
Please remember, these stories are true fact and are a real depiction of policing the UK. If you have a story you would like to share, please email us at info@realpolicetalk.co.uk. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe and follow for notifications of more Real Police Talk.